and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be doing worst books whilst doing a chore that I hate, which is cleaning my makeup brushes. I used to clean these on a really regular basis. I have this really good solid brush cleaner, and I basically just warm water, soap, leave, rinse, so that once I know, and like kind of do like a rubbing on a towel. I've stolen Zach's towel because he's not here and I can't find mine. I can only assume it's because he's stolen it. Talking about my worst books whilst doing a chore I hate just felt like a good vibe, especially after talking about my favourite books, or books that I adored, and doing the Lego last week. Or you will have seen it last week. I'm filming these two today because I'm trying to get ahead to a video every day, April. I've also done more prep. Not just this, but I've also written a list this time, because if you did watch the video last week, you will know that I really struggled to remember any of the books that I had read that I adored, which is not by any stretch a reflection on the fact that some of those books weren't good, but just the fact that I didn't remember. And that water has already gone murky. So I need to do my brushes because I've been doing a lot of travelling. So even though I clean them on a really regular basis, they had got really dusty and gross because they've just been in my car and in my bag. They don't need proper going over, thankfully, but they do need going over to a certain extent. That came up really clean, really nicely. So there we go. Nice and clean. But this has like antibacterial stuff in it as well. I'm always really tempted to spray them with antibac stuff as well, but this is a really good brush cleaner and it stops me breaking out, so we love to see it. So starting with one of the books that I thought was just such a waste of my time as I was reading it, to the point that I very nearly DNF'd it and then I got to the end and wished I had, was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. We're starting controversial. That is going to feel really controversial because so many people friggin' loved that book. And I don't know if it's the Victorian vibe. I don't know if it was that the actual fae stuff was just not interesting to me. I don't know what it was. I didn't care for it. I thought the pacing was really slow. The ending, the ending just was not satisfying at all. And I just kind of wish that I had spent my time reading literally anything else. And I reached the end of it thinking, what even was that? The fact that it was so popular with people confused me massively, because then this year I read A Natural History of Dragons, which has a very similar writing style, but I think there's something about the older protagonist that just makes it more interesting. Like, you can understand why she talks in this very, like, old school way. Like, we're supposed to believe that this character is not only a scientist and someone to be respected, but interesting, young, exciting, adventurous, etc. And like the fact that this fae guy is like clearly obsessed with her. Why? Like she is the most Mary Sue, Mary Jane I've ever met in my life. And I just thought, people who have rocked up for vibes, I don't see them. I do not see where these vibes are vibing. I just didn't see it. I just didn't see what everyone was seeing. And I just stopped talking about it at that point because I thought, I can tell people I don't like this book, but it's not helping anyone. It's not making anyone feel better. It's not making me feel any better because it was just tedious. The next book that I thought was massively underwhelming was Glass Houses, which is the first in the Morganville series. Now, I was buddy reading this with Amy, as in Amy McCall, Vampire Queen, and Lizzie, who, it was a reread for them, but I had never read them before, and I was told that if I enjoyed like Twilight and stuff that I would enjoy this. It's kind of like True Blood but for teens, etc. And like, do we just let vampire authors get away with murder in 2012? Because I feel like there are so many books that I've read where the vampires are like a key theme and they're just bad. They're just poorly written, and the kind of shenanigans, stick that everywhere, the shenanigans that these authors let these characters get up to is obscene, and I just couldn't fathom half the choices this main character made. Like, at the end of the day, she moves to this place, there's vampires and stuff. I thought some of the mythology was interesting, the fact that like if you leave you forget, because that's all part of like how vampires stay secret, etc. But she moves essentially into this like cult town for vampires and like swiftly gets on the wrong side of everybody. Like, just imagine. And then discovers that, of course, the boy she likes is also dead, but a different kind of dead. I just thought, there's a lot going on here, and yet still nothing is happening. I thought the pacing was weird. I could not be bothered with reading the rest of the series. I think Lizzie made it another book and a half before they gave up with their rereads. And I'm pretty sure Amy made it to the end, so good for Amy. But Amy, you love vampires in a way that I just don't anymore, and I'm so sorry. The only vampire books I'm interested in now are yours. So it was less than mediocre. It was just grim. Then we had Madam, which is my own fault and my own problem, because Madam was one of the Lunar Library books, and I didn't read many of the reviews when it came out because I got it as a hardback when it was first released, and then I chose it, one, to tick it off my TBR because I'm naughty that way, and also because the paperback had just been released. So it seemed like a really good choice for the Lunar Library. So I'm just watching all the makeup come off this. It's so gross. This is why you clean your brushes regularly, kids. Now, Madam was a weird one because it's dark academia set at a boarding school for girls, and it's full of these like elitist assholes. You have to respond to everyone as Madam, and this new teacher, that's really weird. Most of that's come off except for like one little patch, so we're going back in. Yeah, this new teacher who is used to teaching at a standard comprehensive, and she's basically being roasted by students and flirted with by teachers. And it's all just, there is something weird going on with this school. Now, I have a real bit in my bonnet about certain school things because I can tell that the person who wrote this was an ex-teacher, because the teachers are actively ignoring stuff that you're trained to see in CPD, as opposed to just negligent author doesn't know that that's a thing that we're supposed to look out for. So I can tell that. That's fine. We can vibe with that. You're doing it on purpose. It's part of the narrative. But it still triggered the hell out of me, and I still hated it, and I still hated that these girls... This is the spoiler, right? So feel free to skip this bit, because this is the spoiler. These girls are being raised to be wives. Not that triggering. Including, but not limited to, having sex with their teachers or fondling their teachers to learn the best way to give a hand job, because it adds to their worth. And okay, I was hoping for supernatural vengeful students, ghosties and ghoulies, not ghoulies and goonies. Like, it was gross. It was really triggering. It was really upsetting. And it wasn't like it was like some big dramatic reveal. The story took so fucking long to get there that by the time I got there, I was just angry about it. I just thought, what on earth is this shit? What a waste of my time. And what a waste of everyone else's time. I've never felt so guilty about choosing a book for a book club before. I've never felt so guilty, because I choose these books for the Lunar Library, not even just based on things that I will enjoy, although that is an element of it, I'll be honest, but based on the fact that it is a gothic book club. And I want there to be lots of gothic tropes. I want there to be some sci-fi elements, some horror elements. I try to pick things with variety. And I know that dark academia is so friggin' popular. And it's a great subgenre of gothic fiction. And it's a great way, if you're nervous about getting into gothic fiction, but you really like murder mysteries, trying some YA dark academia is a great way to get into it. And it basically focuses on anything that is academic based. So the kids can either be obsessed with... Well, that is lathering up a storm. I love that. I'm just making little roses now out of my little swirlies. Anyway, yeah, the students can either be obsessed with a particular subject, or they can have some kind of... Usually there's like occult elements, or there's like mental health rep and stuff like that. There's a variety of different things that can make something dark academia. It's a really broad genre, but also incredibly niche, because if it doesn't have the elitism, if it doesn't have that kind of academic background, or even if it's not necessarily academic in the traditional institution sense, but more just in the fact that they're studying something to the point of madness, that's kind of what makes it dark academia, at least in my eyes anyway. That's the understanding that I have of dark academia. That one looks clean, but I'm going to clean it anyway because it's been in my bag and it looks kind of gross. As in, like, the rest of my bag looks gross, not that this brush looks gross. This brush looks clean, but I'm going to clean it anyway. It was boring. the lead up to it, the kind of pacing of it was so weird. And there were so many elements where the main character absolutely could have gone and done some research herself, didn't. She lets her family be walked all over because the salary is just too good. She needs it for the funds. But then eventually has this kind of like breakthrough where she realises, oh, maybe grooming girls is not a good idea. Finally grows up moral conscience. But the girls have to save themselves. She doesn't even do anything to help them. She kind of just like bounces. It has a really ambiguous ending, so you don't know if she died or if she managed to get away, but she probably got away. And the girls were kind of all taken home and stuff like that. But it's an institution, it'll rebuild. But the girls had to set fire to their own building to save themselves. She did fuck all. So, like a really lazy investigator and then a really passive protagonist. Like, boring. What a waste of my time. And as you can see, where it triggered me made me really mad. I read loads of really bad Pride and Prejudice retellings. Now, unfortunately, in an attempt to read as many Pride and Prejudice retellings as I could get my hands on, it did mean that I read some really great Pride and Prejudice retellings. And I also read some absolute shockers. I think the worst ones were Death Comes to Pemberley, which was just misogynistic and boring. Lizzie Bennet is barely on page. And when she is, she's only there to kind of like solve it at the end, having worked with all these men. Thanks, men. They solved it, the men. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Now, I really liked the film Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I thought it was a really fun time. I like the depiction of Mr. Collins by Matt Smith, although apparently he's an arsehole now, so I love that for us. Really like Lily James as Lizzie Bennet. I thought she was like a feisty version of Lizzie Bennet that is not akin to the original at all, but it didn't matter because she was a good time in that instance. I enjoyed that. And the Mr. Darcy was classic and broody and a little bit autistic, and we love to see it. The book is copy and paste the original with the occasional mention of zombies, and the zombie element is never resolved. That's never solved as a thing. It's just that zombies happen to happen in this version of historical England. Which, at least the film, it gave it some fucking context. It gave it some... It did nothing. It did nothing. Like, even in the film, Mr. Wickham's got a reason to be hanging out with zombies. In the other one, he doesn't even do that. He just kind of kidnaps Lydia like a creep. Like, it was just boring and ill thought out. I feel like it was kind of... It should have stayed the fan fiction it was, you know? I can see why people liked it, but people need more imagination. I'm coming at people and their imagination. I'm not massively one for insulting readers usually, because like, good for you for picking up a book. But pick up a better book. There are so many really good zombie books and so many really good Pride and Prejudice retellings. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, ain't it? It was tedious. It only got 2 stars because I finished it. That was it. If I hadn't finished it, and I wish I hadn't finished it, I wish I'd given up, but it was part of a vlog project, so I committed. Another vlog project that, in the end, I think I did give up on this one because I only read 2 of the 3 books I was planning on reading, was The Great Gatsby. I think I ended up sharing that video in the end. I can't remember. I'll have a check, and if it is, it'll pop up in the little screen in the corner. But The Great Gatsby is such a weird fucking book because it's racist, it's misogynistic, it's weirdly capitalist, considering it's meant to be like anti that, and it kind of gets away with it because it's like, well, that's the point, except it's boring as well. And I remember years and years ago I went on this date with this guy and we were talking books, and I hadn't read The Great Gatsby at this point, so I only had like a vague idea that it was this American classic, that it was a beautiful book that looks at the gentrification and surrounding farmlands of rural America at a time just prior to the Great Depression. So kind of in kind of predestined, the world's about to end kind of vibes, which fair enough here for. Obviously, since then I discovered, and you can look this up, that there are so many people that theorise that F. Scott Fitzgerald just stole that from his wife, that all of the passages that are actually really fucking good come straight from her diary after he put her in a mental asylum. So we love that, hence the misogyny. throughout the entire book is because the only good bits were stolen from his wife. The retelling by Anne-Marie McLemore, speak English, was interesting and good because it looked more at the racism and capitalism elements. But anyway, this guy had told me that he rereads The Great Gatsby every year, that it's his favourite book, it's the best book, he reads it every year. And the date did not go well. The date did not go well. And at the time, I was like, that's a real shame that we weren't vibing, because he's a reader, I'm a reader, blah, blah, blah. In hindsight, I dodged a fucking bullet. Like, if someone turns around to you and says that The Great Gatsby is their favourite book, and they read it every year, run for the hills. Take those hills, build more hills, and hide behind them, because what are they thinking? Do they just want to be rich? Do they not understand nuance? Do they not understand internalized misogyny? It's not worth the risk. It's not worth the risk. Get out of there as soon as you can. Equally, another one that had a really interesting concept, what was rife with tedium and misogyny, was The Madwoman's Ball. Now, I bought this book because I was really, for a start, it was beautiful. I was really interested in reading more translated books. This is originally French. And I was looking for a historical fiction, gothic, that would be something a little different. And I knew this would have mental health rep. What I didn't know is that, once again, it would have misogyny. It obviously was going to have misogyny in the fact that these women are put in a mental hospital, but the internalised misogyny between the staff was just there, I guess. And how fucking boring it was. It's a novella. Nothing happens. Nothing really feels resolved. And it was incredibly predictable. And I was really disappointed. And I should have known better, because I was really hyped for it. And I was reading it during Beth's Patreon reading sprints. And Beth had already read it during previous reading sprints, which is why I decided to pick it up at that point. And Beth was like, it's not good. And I was like, okay, but I bought it and it's pretty, so I hope it is. It wasn't. It wasn't, and I should have trusted Beth. So Beth, I'm very sorry. I should have trusted you. I read Woman in Black because I was getting rid of books, and I kept meaning to read this because I had a really pretty edition. But of all the gothic originals that people come up with, whenever you talk about gothic ghost stories, I know this is everyone's fave. I didn't care for it, and that's all I've got to say for it. And there's not a lot to say about this one. I know I'm not going to convince people to read it or not read it. It just wasn't my favourite. I much prefer Turn of the Screw, and I also just generally prefer more modern and actually modernised ghost stories. I think there is something about the era that this one is set in that I just don't care for. I might actually run out of books to slag off before I run out of brushes to clean. Who saw that coming? There is a little bit of soap left in all of these, so I will rinse them properly under a hot tap to get it all out. This is to just get the general gunk off, basically. And like I said, I do this on a pretty regular basis so that I don't break out. It doesn't always work. I have got spots all around my chin at the moment, but I think that's more a PCOS issue. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This was supposed to be a read-along that I was hosting with Abby and Becca and Lizzie and maybe a couple of others, but those are the OGs because those are the ones that did Skullduggery with me. And we are looking to bring Skullduggery back now that there's new books and new series coming out. We did about 3 live shows, and then the live shows stopped. And I'm so sorry to Becca, because that must have really impacted your neurodivergence, because I just did not communicate about that whatsoever at the time. I kind of just let it fall off the wayside because I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with how misogynistic the books were being. I couldn't deal with the fact that they made no fucking sense. And not even a fun Terry Pratchett kind of way. Just in a, why are you here and why is this happening kind of way. I didn't enjoy them. They're not even that long. And I was really disappointed. The first one, I enjoyed. The first one was a good time. And I think the other thing that really disappointed me about that, this looks like actual sludge now, which makes me really sad. I think the thing that makes me really sad about it is my dad loves the Hitchhiker's Guide. And he loved the radio play. And he says they're much better as a radio play than they ever were as books. But they are some of his favourite books. And that made me really sad because I really wanted to be like, hey, Papa, we have this in common. We don't. I didn't enjoy them. I thought they were really bad. But he hasn't reread them in a while. I don't think he will reread them because my dad's in a murder mystery kick at the moment. He's into Scandi noirs and straight up murder serial killers. So it's intense, but it's very mainstream. So good for him. I don't think he's going to reread them anytime soon, but I did give him my copies because I was like, if anyone's going to read and enjoy them, it'll be him. So he has them now. I think we gave the other set, Lizzie gave their set to a school, or it might be upstairs, but they were just misogynistic, they were boring, and they weren't worth the money I spent on them. So for that, I am sorry, not just to Abby and Becca for wasting your time, but to anyone else who jumps on the read-along that seemed to just end 2 months in. I'm very, very sorry. My bowl is getting frothy. I might, if you're lucky, do a zoom in later and you can go, disgusting. Because it is. But like I said, these have all got a little bit of soap on, so I will rinse them off in a second, so they'll be nice and clean. That's it. I have actually now run out of books to talk about. I've reached the end of my worst books list, but I have not yet finished my cleaning. So we're going to keep talking. We're just going to fill some silence. If you want to skip to the end or skip from here, I respect it. I understand. I'm done talking about books that I don't enjoy. I think the thing is, there's always really interesting discourse when it comes to doing worst book videos. Now, obviously, I missed the boat in doing best books and I missed the boat in doing worst books. So that is what it is. What I think is really interesting is the idea that we make ourselves feel guilty if we don't like something. People are film snobs, gin snobs, coffee snobs, and we make ourselves feel bad if we don't meet those kind of elitist ideals of not liking something. But I'm a firm believer that books are not a hostage situation. This is my last brush. Books are not a hostage situation, and therefore, if you're not enjoying it, DNF it. DNF it. Loads of these books I finished because I really thought I could make it to the end. I really thought that there would be something that it gave me at the end that would make it worthwhile, and each one of them bamboozled me and did not deliver on that end of the bargain. But I don't feel bad about telling you that these books were bad because I gave the authors my money. They got paid, they worked really hard on those books, and they got paid, and they found a team to work with them, because I don't know if you've noticed, none of those books are self-published. So they have teams of people working with them who get paid to promote their book and make it better and have a good time with it. And they gave me something that I just didn't enjoy. I'm not the target audience for that. That doesn't make me a bad person, doesn't make them a bad person. There are bad people out there. But that's not this video, because there are authors that I've actively not read and authors that I will now no longer promote because of their problematic shit. But again, none of those people on this list, you've got the occasional misogynist, but internalized misogyny is really hard to deconstruct anyway because the patriarchy owns everything. So that's not going to change anytime soon. I don't think you should ever feel bad about not liking. This is the one that I save for the end to just get all my gunk out, basically, and then I'll give it a proper rinse. I don't think you should ever feel bad about not liking a book. If there's a book that you didn't like, that you're worried is controversial, you don't have to tell people, but don't feel like you don't have to talk about it, that you're not allowed to talk about it because you don't like it. You will find your people, and if you're worried that you're going to get any kind of, like, smack from someone else by talking about this book that you don't like, leave it in the comments down below and I'll back you. If you didn't like it, I'll back you. I'm going to go rinse off my brushes. I will include a little clip of the gunk for you. But let me know in the comments down below the last book that you read that you just didn't like. You just kind of pushed through it and you really wish you hadn't. And I will back you in not liking it. I will join you. Even if it's a fave of mine. I won't tell anyone. I will just back you. If you want to leave a little makeup style emoji, I think there's a couple of little makeup ones in the comments down below just to let me know you were here. Treat yourself to something from Waypoint because it supports me and my content, and check out the links below because I have a Patreon now, and most importantly, have a nice day.